Let's connect with the management of BPCL. The Chairman and Managing Director, Mr. S. Varadarajan, joins us live. Mr. Varadarajan, good morning and thank you for joining us. With you, it's all about numbers, and let's be specific here. Your current under-recovery both for petrol and diesel, how is that panning out, and what is the current under-recovery?
Good morning, Nikunj. I think on the under-recovery front, currently the under-recovery on diesel is close to around 8 rupees. And as far as petrol is concerned, there is no under-recovery. We are making our normal margins because it's mark-to-market already. So there's no question of any under-recovery on gasoline. However, on kerosene, we still continue to have under-recovery of close to around 36 rupees. And for LPG domestic per cylinder, we still have an under-recovery of around 640 rupees per cylinder or 14.2 kg. So the three products translates into a current under-recovery of almost around 3,400, 3,500 crores for BPCL in a month. So that's the order of under-recoveries we are going through.
Mr. Varadarajan, hi, morning. What's the sense that you're getting about the fourth quarter though? What kind of under-recoveries could we be looking at?
I think fourth quarter should be very similar to what we had in the third quarter. Third quarter, I think we had an under-recovery of close to around 9,900 crores or so. So we are looking at an under-recovery of close to around similar figures of 10,000 crores for Q4. And for the full year, we are looking at for BPCL a gross under-recovery of almost around 34 to 35,000 crores. Which means for the industry it could be in the region of 1,40,000 crores, and that would be much lower than the comparative figure for the previous year, which was 1,60 plus.
The free cylinder quota has gone up from 7 to 9 and 9 to 12, but the latest move is from 9 to 12. How will this change life for you?
Well, as far as we are concerned, LPG is a administered product and the subsidies are administered by the government. So any increase in the quantum would lead to higher subsidy burden. And for the industry per annum, I think it translates to somewhere between 4 to 5,000 crores depending on the customer population and the actual drawal of cylinders between 9 to 12. So ultimately it goes as part of the overall subsidy calculation, and it's more of a policy framework which is adhered to by the industry. So it really may not have that much of an impact as far as the bottom line of the individual marketing companies are concerned.
Mr. Varadarajan, what kind of trends are you observing when it comes to your GRMs, and what's the range that we could see them moving over the next few quarters?
Well, I think the GRMs have been steady. We have for the current 9 months period reported around $3.5, $3.6 per GRM, which is slightly lower than the 9 months period of the last year. Q3 we did have some plant shutdowns, and international spreads in some of the products like gasoline had slightly come down. So that reflected in a slightly lower GRM for Q3. But Q4 we are already seeing the trends, and they are back to the normal levels of say $4 to $4.5 a barrel. Going forward, I think it's very difficult to predict at this point in time because the gasoline spreads have actually gone up currently. So it may still look better. But over the next 12 months, based on the forward pricing and the kind of reports which are prevalent, I think we can look at GRMs averaging as to what it was in the last.
What about your borrowing costs?
Borrowing cost for Q3, I think you would have seen that the interest cost has really come down. And that's because the average borrowing cost, which was as high as almost 9 to 10% in the first 6 months, has come down to close to around less than 7% for Q3. Trends are that the overall borrowing levels have also come down because of the subsidy releases in the first 6 months by the government. So as an average of around say 23, 24,000, we are now currently at borrowing levels of around 16, 17,000. And we are yet to receive some compensation for the first 9 months. The latest announcement of 10,000 crores for the industry is hopefully likely to come in. So I think the borrowings at the moment are comfortable. Interest rates have slightly gone down. And we do hope that these trends prevail as we move into the next year, and that's reflected in the interest cost.
Have you got any requests from the Finance Ministry or the Oil Ministry for a special stroke interim dividend, and if yes, are you in a position to give one?
I mean, for the OMCs, the question of interim dividend does not arise because as you see, for the first 9 months period, I think all of us have reported losses. Of course, BPC has reported a very marginal loss of 7 crores. That's because we have absorbed a huge under recovery in the first 9 months, and BPCL alone has absorbed almost around 4,100 crores of under recovery, and similar numbers are there for HPC and IOC, which is much higher. So clearly the question of interim dividend does not arise, and there will be no requests as far as this area is concerned. At the year end, we would have the final dividend depending on the profit numbers which would be decided.
Which is what surprises me. Why do you give a dividend every year? We know the financial numbers. The subsidy burden is still an issue. So, is there a need to give an interim, is there a need to follow dividend policy?
Well, I think the government has invested its equity stakes in various companies, and all investments do expect a return as part of the process. And for profit-making companies, one of the way of rewarding the shareholders over periods of time is the regular dividend payouts. So, I think everybody follows the same principle. Yes, there are some issues around the subsidy and the reporting of quarterly numbers, but I think at the end of the year, when you do make profits, I think it's only right that you share, and the majority holder being the government, I think it is right in expecting its own share of the overall profit numbers as a form of dividends. And dividends have been a steady payout as far as our numbers are concerned, and the profits have been increasing. In fact, last year we did have a doubling of profits, going up from 1,300 to 2,600. So that kind of increase in profits must reflect in the rewards to the shareholders over periods of time.
Right. What about the fact that going into elections, do you expect the 50 paise per month per litre price rise is going to continue, or do you think this quantum could be tampered with?
Well, it's a policy decision. I think over the last 13-14 months, we have seen increases happen, and we have managed to push through an increase of almost close to around 7 rupees over the last 12-13 months. And there is a cabinet decision for these small doses of increase to correct the diesel subsidy pricing. I think going forward, it's more of a policy framework which we need to wait for the government to take forward. But having done it for almost 13-14 months and having seen the response in the market for these slow doses of increase, I think that's the right way forward, and I'm sure that the government would support, because we are clearly looking at the diesel prices getting completely deregulated in the 12 to 15 month frame going forward. So I think it's a positive step, and I'm sure that the government would continue to go through this process over this period of time.
Fair point. Mr. Varadarajan, if diesel price hikes continue and the rupee-dollar parity remains more or less stable, in how many months do you see diesel under-recovery fully get erased?
As I said, about 12 to 15 months is at current trends. We still have an under-recovery of close to around 8 rupees. And if you were to see the rupee behaving in the region of 62 to 63, and if the crude prices are in the region of $106 to $108 to $109, which is currently the pricing average, I think in the next 12 to 15 months, we should be seeing complete deregulation of diesel pricing in the market, which would once again open up the market for all competitors.
So a follow-up question which has just leapt in my mind is that with 1 rupee price appreciation in diesel, what is the net saving for BPCL?
Well, I think it's almost like we sell 1.7, 1.8 million. So you can talk of almost around 1 rupee could translate into somewhere around close to that number, rupees crores, as far as the gains are concerned. And I think it translates into somewhere around 180 or 190 crores roughly, if I remember right. That was the kind of figure which we are having. And for the industry, it would translate to somewhere around close to 700 crores or something as part of the reduction in the under-recovery in the overall process.
What are the trends in for diesel demand? The idea here is to increase diesel prices in a staggered manner and bring the diesel demand down. Has that endeavor worked so far?
Well, I think the diesel price increases over periods of time has reflected in a slight slowing of the demand very clearly, and the diesel growth, which was somewhere in the region of say 6 to 8%, has slowed down and come to almost around 0 or less than 1% growth. Also, you would have seen that last year we pushed up the prices for all the direct customers of diesel. So to that extent that 8 to 10% of the market is today already based on the market pricing. And there has been a reduction in consumption over this period of time, But also we need to recognize that there are several other factors which influence the demand, because the per capita consumption is very low. Overall, the economy has gone through a slightly lower phase of growth, so to that extent the demand growth in diesel has been lower. Also, I think the monsoon has been extremely good this year. Power segment has really produced enough power, so to that extent drawing of diesel for the DG sets and for the agriculture segment has been slightly lower. So I think a combination of all these factors have really led to the diesel demand being where it is. But if the economic growth comes back to that 6 to 7% growth, and as I did mention that the per capita consumption is still very low, we would see an increase in demand coming back for the 4 to 5%. So our long-term prediction is that there would still be a 4 to 5% growth in the domestic demand, while in the current year it has been very close to 1%. Q3, for example, I mentioned that it is already back to around 3.5% in the overall growth. But a norm growth of say 4 to 5% is something what we look forward in the times to come.
Final question. Now, what has differentiated BPCL from other oil marketing companies is the fact that you have a very sizable and a big global E&P presence. As a firm, as a company, you have heavily invested in your global business. When do we see the dividends of that? And do you think your investment phase is over?
I think the investment phase has just started, because as far as upstream is concerned, these are for the long term. The differentiation very clearly is in the kind of global presence which it gives. Looks at integrated revenues happening by 18-19, when the first oil and gas is likely to be sold from these ventures. The valuations of BPCL within the downstream companies clearly reflects the difference as far as the upstream success is concerned. Having said that, I think Mozambique has been one of the biggest success, and almost 35 to 65 TCF of recoverable gas has been disclosed by the operators. The operators are looking at monetizing these assets, and there are plans to put up an LNG terminal where, as a consortium partner, we will be participating. Brazil also has seen some huge success in the Sergipe-Alagoas basin, and Petrobras is now working through the appraisal plans while the numbers are still awaited. And we have till date invested close to about $1 billion in the upstream, and going forward over the next 3 to 4 years, during the appraisal and the development phase of these two significant discoveries, we would hope to spend somewhere between $2 to $2.5 billion. And we are hoping that by 18-19, Bharat Petroleum would truly have an integrated P&L which would reflect revenues from the upstream also. So that's where it is, and that's a significant differentiator as far as as Bharat Petroleum is concerned.
Okay, Mr. Varadarajan, I'm going to let you go on that note. Nice long